So Friday there was, Steiny and Goo went to go play the sound. I was driving around. We had the little guy in the car. We went to Little Rec at Golden Gate Park as a family. We had a great day.
What is it?
It's called Little Rec. There's Big Rec and there's Little Rec. Big Rec is where there's two like OG baseball diamonds, and then Little Rec is like, it's like a tiny little field where they have soccer games, and there's like this little playground right there. The carousel's right there.
Oh, love the carousel.
Yeah, it was really cool. So I'm listening to the Dunleavy sound, and then we go play at the park for, 2 hours, give or take. We went to the conservatory. We come back, and then Willard and Grandy are super giddy, and they're like, yeah, we're gonna have Steve Kerr on. And I heard the entire Steve Kerr interview while Michelle went in and got food on West Portal, and I was just in the car. Little guy was asleep, and so I was listening to it, and there was a consistent theme from Steve Kerr, and I don't know if I necessarily felt that same theme from Mike Dunleavy, so it felt more like the GM was giving me GM talk, and yet I was looking through the soul of the head coach as I heard him do a press conference and then an individual interview with Grandy and Willard, which was an excellent interview.
They did, and if you missed any of that when he joined those guys on our station on Friday, find it on the free Odyssey app or on YouTube, where you can find each and every one of our interviews. And we had Nick Friedel on. Cousin Nick covers the Warriors for The Athletic. He joined us on Friday, and he was more interested to hear what Mike Dunleavy had to say than Steve Kerr. He was more fascinated to hear what he had to say, too. Not to say we can't hear anything from Steve, but for me, after that novel I read from ESPN's Wright Thompson, who spent the entire year basically with Steve Kerr, I felt like I already understood everything that was taking place. So it was more of a formality to hear from the head coach at that point. I was curious to see what Mike Dunleavy had to feel and say about this past season. And this was the one for me I want to start with, because it kind of bothered me. Mike Dunleavy about coming up short this season because of injuries.
In the grand scheme of things, not a lot about the roster. This just isn't about the roster, frankly. Like, this year, I don't think we came up short because of the talent of the roster. It was injuries and things we could control. Do we need to get better roster-wise? I think so, but we didn't get to a point where we played a team where, the roster was better than ours. So for that reason, we're more focused on the stuff that we can control. We'll always look to be better, talent-wise, roster-wise, all that. But going back to the question, as far as the discussions weren't really about that. It was more with the team that we have, how can we be better? And what are the things we need to do to build on for long-term success?
All right, there's so much there.
There's not a team that had more talent than us. It's like, Mike, come on, you know the game.
Delusional. It's no, straight up. That's what that was. And you're what are you selling me? And Warriors fans are no dummies. We have them here. They're fired. They're passionate. Some of the best fans in all of sports. You can't tell me it's not about the roster and it was just because of injuries when the roster, their best three players on the roster were all over the ages of 35. You had to have known heading into last season that major injuries to one or all of your big three players was a possibility. You refusing to acknowledge that in the season-ending presser and looking ahead to say, oh, it was just because of injuries. No one could have predicted that. I just really? We all talked about it. Joe, you and I talked about it all summer.
I know.
Steiny has been talking about it. Everyone on this station has been saying, yeah, I don't know if this is going to end well when it comes to Jimmy, Steph, both of whom got hurt in the playoffs last year, and Draymond Green, who has so much wear and tear on his knees.
And let's acquire, Al Horford, who can't play in any back-to-backs, and let's acquire Kristaps Porzingis midseason.
Oh, let's get Seth Curry, too. Yeah.
Forgot about
exactly. Let's get Seth Curry.
Here's the thing. I don't think he's this dumb.
No, but you hear that, come on, man.
Well, here's
what are you trying? What are you saying?
You interpreted it. You were like, "Are you kidding me?" And I get that.
Yes.
I totally get it. Trust me, I get that. I interpreted that as, guys, I built this thing for these old guys so that we could kind of double down on them being old. We were boxed in. That's the way I viewed it. And I'm not going to disrespect some of these legends by saying we don't have enough talent.
Sure.
I think Dunleavy knows exactly what's wrong with this team, and he just can't say it out loud.
Well,
I don't think he's allowed to say it out loud because of the role that he's in, and you want to maintain value of the players, and I just don't buy it.
Why is it okay for Steve Kerr during last season basically to say, Yeah, we're like a tier below. We're a major tier below the Oklahoma City Thunder. But why can't Dunleavy just say, yeah, we're not on the Spurs or Thunder's level right now. We would like to get there at some point, but we know this roster is not going to be competing with those guys when both are healthy.
But why
can't he say that?
Because Kerr is a 4-time champion as a coach and one of the greatest. Kerr would have a job yesterday with any team he wants.
Because his Q rating within the organization, basically, is what you're saying.
His equity, everything. Okay. It's his status, his equity, his ability to be forthright. And he also is not the one maintaining contracts and trade value and fielding calls. I just think their roles are so different. Dunleavy has to speak different than Kerr. So when Kerr is being truthful, right, to you know what I interpret it as? I think Dunleavy thinks the way Kerr is thinking, but isn't allowed to, and because of the position that he's in, the role that he's in, isn't allowed to say it out loud.
Did the Warriors just have bad luck last season with injuries, or was it a bad roster?
No, come on, the roster. Dunleavy's not that dumb.
Well, no.
He knows the roster's not that good.
I'm curious if people think it was just bad luck with injuries, and if they're healthy next year, everything will be fine.
I don't.
888-957-9570. Was it bad luck, or was it a bad roster?
I mean, in the Western Conference, they have 7 teams in front of them that have better rosters. 7.
They lost to the Suns in the play-in game.
Nuggets, Timberwolves, Thunder, Blazers, Lakers, Rockets, and the Spurs. Those are all better rosters, are they not?
I would say yes.
And if they didn't have an amazing 7 minutes down the stretch against the Clippers,
you would have lost that game, yeah. And maybe you get a top 4 pick instead.
I don't know. Maybe. Look. I probably sound like I'm caping up for Dunleavy.
No, you don't.
What I'm saying is that I think in his role, whether it was Dunleavy, whether it was Farhan Zaidi, whoever, I just don't take what he's saying in that role as word of the gospel the way everyone else does, because I just think that you have to figure out what you're doing with Draymond. You have to figure out what you're doing with pods. You have to maintain value of your players. You don't want to tip your hand to other organizations. You don't want to diminish people's value. You don't want to disrespect them to their agents. I think you're balancing so many plates. You just have to say things.
Do you feel like you could have trusted Bob Myers whenever he spoke to the media?
Again, certified champion,
I know.
equity.
I know.
Think about where Bob was 3 years in versus where he was 10 years in.
I just don't think Dunleavy will ever gain the trust of this fan base. Because his first ever move and first ever presser, he actually was asked about, hey, Jordan Poole, where do you envision him with this? Hey, Jordan's going to be a great player with us for a long time. I'm paraphrasing here. Basically what he said. And then what happened? Gone. Let me attach a first-round pick and bring in Chris Paul.
But here's the thing, though.
So it's hard for me to ever look past that.
Okay, but what if he had come out and said this? I was ticked off about that sequence too. Yeah. What's he going to say? I mean, Jordan's got to go because you know what? My owner wants to sign Draymond. So Jordan's got to go, guys. Come on, you can't say that at a podium.
I think you got to figure out a way to say something that kind of straddles that line where it's just like, we love Jordan Poole. We hope to have a long future with him. And then that's it.
Maybe he thought that the morning of. And then he got a phone call from Washington. And
I think it's
made an offer he couldn't refuse.
You give kind of that non-answer answer there where it's just like he kind of did it with Draymond. Like, yeah, the ball's in his court. We hope to have him here for a long time, but he's got to make a decision. It kind of... You play both sides there in a sense when you give an answer like that. We hope to have Jordan Poole here implies that there's a situation where maybe he doesn't end up here.
I think they work in tandem. So one is good cop, one is bad cop at all times, meaning your GM and your head coach. And you see this with John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan. Sure. They kind of, oscillate regarding their role at any given time of whose decision is what and who's in control. You interpreted it one way. I interpreted Dunleavy talking just as a whole in a totally different way.
Oh, how so?
I just think that he's shopping Draymond. I don't think he wants Draymond on this team. They kept referencing turnovers and over and over and over again. Kerr was referencing turnovers. You know who they're yes, they're talking about Curry. They're also talking about Draymond. They brought up spacing over and over and over again. And I think that Dunleavy, if he had it his way, would either move off Draymond, Draymond would opt out and not come back.
Interesting.
One or the other. I think there's a Draymond conversation that's happened internally, and I think they're all on the same page. I think they're ready to turn the page on Draymond.
I do keep going back to that image, and Steiny brings this up a lot, of that Phoenix Suns game ending when he's getting kicked out.
The face he gave.
The face that Dunleavy he just gave Draymond when Draymond was walking off the court. It was just like, are you kidding me? It's like This guy really? That's kind of how I perceived it. Yeah, in real time. And I was sitting in the hospital, I was holding a newborn baby. I was like, oh, that's not good.
Well, like one thing I do know, there was some double talk, meaning on one end, we want to stay loyal to the vets, and Horford's important, and Kristaps is important, and Draymond's important, and Curry obviously is everything in this solar system. He's the sun, but you can't have all of that and then Kerr come out and say, we need young legs, we need to practice more, and we need to be able to have guys that can play in more games to build that synchronicity, that vibe, that feeling. Those don't jive. So they're moving off some old guys, everyone. Like they know it. And I thought that was the most encouraging thing I heard over the entire weekend was, I think they're keeping the 11th pick, and I think it's the right move.
This is what Dunleavy had to say on the optionality of the 11th overall pick.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lottery pick, so I think in a strong draft, we feel like we can get a good player. So we'll look at it that way. But we'll look at everything. If there's offers for the pick to move up, move back, trade for a veteran player that could help us, I mean, we'll definitely look at all that stuff. But it's early in the process right now, and just got through with the combine, and so going through that stuff, starting to evaluate the prospects. But we feel pretty good about 11. Had some good success there before.
Obviously referencing one Klay Thompson, who was the 11th overall pick out of Wazoo once upon a time. And I do want to get to the sound that you referenced about Steve Kerr, too, on solving the turnover issue. Dunleavy spoke about adding more athleticism to the roster. And Warrior fans, are you with me when you heard Mike Dunleavy refusing to admit that doubling down on the older players may have been the wrong move? I don't know. Just all you could have said was, we knew it was a possibility. That's it. That they could have gotten hurt. And they did. They're old.
That I agree with.
Just say, you know what? It sucks. It happened. It was a risk we were willing to take, and it failed.